beside every step of the way. Please join me in welcoming our honored guest, Margaret Summers, as we remember and celebrate the lives and racing legacy of her beloved husband, George, and son, Richard. Thank you.
I have a lot of stories I could relate to. One of them being when my daughter Kathy was in school over in Framingham, and the nun was very upset with her and with me that I took her out of school on Friday afternoons, and sometimes she missed Monday coming to school because of her father's racing, and this, what a terrible life that was, and what all the things she thought that was terrible. And I said to her, I went over one day because she was giving Kathy a hard time. And I said, well, just what is your problem? And she said, well, you know, the life he leads, the life he lives. I said, well, you know, I take them on Fridays, I have their homework, they have to get it done, and they get their best marks during that time period because we make them have their school time. And I said, as far as the father's life and what he does, I said, when every parent sitting out there can tell you where their teenager was from Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, talk to me. I know where my teenagers were Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights with their father and I. They built great relationships still to this day. And I have a lot of wonderful memories of the places we went, the things that we did. I always start everything when I say that on September 1st, 1956, I married a race car driver and I became a race car driver's wife. Because I'll never forget my mother when we told her that we were getting married. She said, I want to tell you right from the beginning that you're number 3 on the list. There's a car, a race car, there's many things before you. And when I entered that marriage, I knew that. But it was a great life. I have wonderful memories of George and the things. He was called Gentleman George. And the story is of Gentleman George. He was in a race down in Seekonk, and he went into the turn a little bit earlier than the guy in front of him who was leading it, and he spun him out. And George went around the back stretch, stopped his car, and waved the guy back by him into first spot. Never catching him, he did finish second. But when he came over the start-finish line, the winner never got anybody a clap or anything. When George come across the line, everybody stood and cheered, and they called him Gentleman George from that point on. There were so many things. The Hendersons were like family. We used to have an Easter egg hunt every Easter. Mr. Gurry, their grandfather, would have them, the kids go up in the woods and get their candy and their things. And then he'd say, George, I just saw a little bunny rabbit up the back there. You better go up and check. And Mr. Gurry would have a little 6-pack of beer there for George, from Mr. Gurry. But we had a wonderful life on Friday nights, even before my kids could go to the races. Dickie, Tommy Stockwell, they were packed in my car, and his brother, Bobby, and we were off to the races. I took them on Friday nights with us to Westboro. George raced Westboro and Seekonk. He was a weekend warrior. He raced from Friday night through Sunday. He drove his truck during the week. And when they called to tell him that he was going into the Living Legends Hall of Fame in Daytona, he said, I never raced big time or thing. And they said, yes. They said, it's not that. His career, 31 years, was far greater than professionals that drive 3 or 4 nights a week. He had over 200 career wins, 100 of them at one racetrack. And he won at 28 different racetracks down through from Vermont down. And one of the greatest stories I had, my grandson had me on TV, his last show. And one of the good stories that I have is we were racing in Martinsville, Virginia, and George had gotten the pole. He was going to be on the pole. And when we arrived at the race Sunday morning, the handicapper said, "You're to the rear of the field, Summers." And George said, "No." He said, "I'm starting on the pole." He said, "No, you're at the rear of the field." And George said, "Why?" And he said, "Where were you? You missed the drivers' meeting." And George said, "I was at Mass." He said, "Well, you're at the rear of the field." A little while later, we're walking through the pits, and Clay Earls, the owner of the Speedway, come over and patting George on the back and said, "Now maybe we'll have you back here a little more often now that you're on the pole." George said, "I'm not on the pole." He said, "Why aren't you?" He said, "I went to Mass this morning." He grabbed him by the arm, took him up to the handicapper, and he said, "George Summers will start on the pole." And that was the owner of Clay Earls. And when we went back to Martinsville that year in the October race, that Clay Earls had gone to the priest in the center of Martinsville, in Danville, and they now had a mass on Saturday nights so that the drivers could go. Bobby Allison, the whole Allison family, the LaJoys would all be there. And he had gone to the priest and asked him. I have so many wonderful memories of the things that happened and the good things and the relationship that my kids have. Jimmy Britt, I don't know if Jimmy's in here, but Jimmy Britt is the young man in the wheelchair. Jimmy was just a toddler in a stroller, and his dad brought him. He sat behind me up on the walkway at the Westboro Speedway, and he was one of George's first fans. Jimmy Britt, I don't know if he's here or not, but he was out there tonight earlier. Just so many wonderful memories and things. I'll never forget when my daughter Mary got married, and Ricky said to his father, "What truck you want me to drive, Dad?" He said, "The one that says Indian Meadows on the side door." That was Westboro, across from the Westboro Speedway that she had her wedding, she wanted it there. And so it was across the street from the Westboro Speedway. So George said, "Take the one that says Indian Meadows on the door." No, it was just a great time, and my children can attest to that, all of them. And it was a good time, wonderful life. Yep.
That was awesome, Maggie. And you always know a good, dear, close family friend because Chief Henderson refers to as Margaret. Right? I'd like to call on Kathy Summers Grice, daughter, who will talk a little bit about Ricky.
Thanks. Thank you. 2 quick stories before I get into my brother Ricky. I don't know where Dick is, but this is how deep the roots come from this town and the Hendersons and the Summerses, that Dick's nephew Cody is guarding my house in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, as we speak, as the wildfires encroach upon it. So 2,000 miles away, a kid that grew up next door to me now lives next door to me in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. The second thing, and I think Pete Falcone is here, there used to be a rumor around Westboro that when they repaved the Westboro Speedway in the mid to late 70s, there was a bump in the third turn, and that's where my father always was able to make hay, so to speak. He'd get up on the outside, get in the inside, and he always used that bump And I can tell you now that the rumor is true that my father stood there while they were repaving the Westboro Speedway because he was invited by Pete's father, and made sure that that bump still was there even though the track was repaved. But, you know, my brother Ricky, he followed my dad's footsteps from a very early age. Ricky had to race everything. He wrecked the lawnmower. He wrecked every car we ever had. He even took the snowmobile and rode it over a jump, and wound up on the front page of the Milford Daily News. But he loved to race cars, and he started out. He had an old Chevy Chevelle. He started out at Thompson and Westboro, and as I look out here, Timmy Aldred, Batesy. How many Friday nights did we spend together at the Westboro Speedway? His friends would come down from New Hampshire and Vermont, and they'd all pile into our house and go race at Westboro. Mark Brochu is here. I don't know how many other people worked on Ricky's race car, but the garage was full on a Thursday night with all the kids coming in, working on the race cars. It's where Ricky got his start. We loved the Westboro Speedway. It was right down the street. It built friendships that we still have. I mean, I don't know how many times, Batesy will be driving through Maine and will call me, and we'll just start talking about my brother Ricky and the fun times that we had. My brother Ricky loved to race at Westboro as much as my dad did. My dad raced all over the country, and he always called the Seekonk Speedway home. But if you knew my dad, you knew that his real home in racing was always the Westboro Speedway. And it was that way because the Falcone family made it that way. They always made it feel like a home to all of us. And it was always a place that my dad used to love to go and to race. So, we are indelibly tied to the Westboro Speedway, to this town, to the people that we grew up in this town, to the people who have been intimately involved in my dad's racing career and my brother Ricky's racing career. There's a whole bunch of guys here that came in on motorcycles because they wanted to be here to support the memory of my brother Ricky. And that's what this town and auto racing has meant to us.
I just want to add to this here that Kathy just spoke of about Westboro Speedway. I will never forget Harvey Tattersall ran Riverside Park, and he one year took over Westboro Speedway doing the promotion there when John retired. And we coming out of the racetrack, and Harvey's stopping George, and he's counting money out. And George said, "Harvey, I didn't win here tonight." He said, "George, I'm not only a race promoter, I'm a businessman. And I know that Upton's 6 miles away, and I want the crowd in my stands next week when we have another show."
Yeah, and
He paid George what the winner, also, he matched the winner's pay because George had gotten put out with like 2 laps to go. And Harvey Tattersall gave him what the winner got also. There was a close relationship with the Falcones, everybody.
And, now that I see Tommy Dowden sitting out here, Timmy Dowden, Keith Dowden, obviously worked for my dad for a good number of years. And, those kids were in the garage on every Wednesday and Thursday night, working with Ricky too. Timmy Maroney, I don't know if he's here, but he patched up a good many race cars like almost every week because Ricky would wreck them almost every week. But Timmy patched up a good many race cars. The Hall kids, it just amazing to see how many people came out to honor my dad and the legacy of the Speedway and what it meant to the town of Upton. So thank you for doing this, Scott.
I also want to add that Ricky, a woman in church, Ricky had a shirt and it said TSDD, School of Hard Knocks. And this lady said to me at church, she said, "I didn't know that Ricky graduated from a technical school. And I said, Ricky didn't